Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Todd Rickman. I'm the Global Director of Adoption and Customer Experience with Cypher Learning. Prior to joining Cypher Learning, I spent 16 years as a classroom teacher, teaching social studies, high school social studies, and 9 years as an assistant superintendent. I'd like to take a second to let Catalina introduce herself before we get going.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catalina Londoño. I am the professional and educational services manager for Latin America for Turnitin. I've been with the company for 5 years now, but before that, I was in academia for 15 plus years. So I'm very excited to be here and talk a little bit about academic integrity.
So we're going to jump right in. I'll share my screen here. Again, we're just very honored to be here with you to talk a little bit about how we can foster a culture of academic integrity in the classroom. And before we get too far, I thought it would be important for us to, first of all, define academic integrity. And this definition comes from the University of California at Berkeley Center for Teaching and Learning. And so I'll read it. Any action or attempted action that may result in creating an unfair academic advantage for oneself or an unfair academic advantage or disadvantage for any other member or members of the academic community. When I was researching definitions for this presentation, they run the gamut. They're all over the place. Some of them are simple. Some of them are much more detailed. And I wanted to be sure to encourage you as you are starting on this path to maybe defining an academic integrity policy, that you start with the definition of academic integrity, that one that works for your organization, your context, the grade levels you're teaching. But this is going to be key. I think that we find so often that sometimes students don't even really understand what academic integrity is. So we need to define it for them. And I'll talk about a little bit later the importance of teaching it. Okay, moving on. So one of the things I wanted to do as we start this is I wanted to get your input. If you could take a minute and let us know, in your experience, why do students cheat? I'm very curious to know what from those of you that are attending, in your experience, why do you think, or why have you seen students cheat? So if you could take a few moments to answer this Slido, I would really appreciate it. So we'll just pause here for a second and make sure that you have some time to respond. And hopefully this works. I always find these so interesting that we all have such different experiences with our students, although it looks like poor study and our time management skills is leading by a lot. So we'll let you do this for one more minute or so, and we'll move on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So what can we do to foster a culture of academic integrity in the classroom? What can you do? And it's interesting from looking at the responses to that survey is that a lot of those things are items that we can control or at least influence with our students. So here are some things that that I think that we should do, and some of the evidence and research bears this out. One of the most important things is educate students on what cheating means in their school community so that cheating is viewed as unacceptable. We know that peer pressure with students means a lot. I remember always talking to my students about, they would come in and say, hey, Mr. Rickman, the cheating is out of control in this one class. And I would ask, well, why do you put up with it? Why do you put up with it? And they always said the same thing. They don't want to be the person that tells on someone else. And I used to explain to them, well, if you're not willing to do that, then you're partially responsible for the environment which you are being educated in, because we all have to come together to say, no, this is unacceptable. Kids really care about what their peers think of them. And if we can get students to understand why cheating is unacceptable, how it hurts everyone involved, I think we can go a long way in creating environments where kids don't cheat. We're not going to eliminate it, obviously, with this. This is just one tool in our toolbox, but we really need to take the time. Take the time. So often we don't feel like we have time in the classroom with everything that we need to cover. But if we take the time to really cover this, I think it will really help. I think we need to strive for school-wide buy-in for honest academic practices, including defining what constitutes cheating, academic dishonesty for students, and providing clear consequences for cheating. Opening dialogue and discussions with teachers and parents, so students feel that teachers are treating them with respect and fairness. Trust. One of the best things you can do as an educator, obviously, and I'm sure you all are wonderful at doing this, is creating open and honest environments where students feel safe. They feel safe, not only physically safe, but emotionally safe. When we do this, when we take the time, we get kids to buy into what we're doing often, because they don't want to let us down. We've created this trusting relationship with them, and they understand what it means to let us down. So one of the keys to tackling academic dishonesty is having kids have not only buy into the honest academic practices that you're trying to promote within your classroom or within your school, but realizing that by cheating, they're not only hurting themselves, but they're letting you down. And students need to feel like things are fair. And so often I feel like we have set up we've stacked the cards against kids sometimes, where they feel like they don't have a chance, that the only way they're going to be able to succeed is to cheat. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, and more about this later. But as far as strive for school-wide buy-in, it can't be a top-down approach. When we tackle cheating and academic honesty and integrity in our classrooms, we really need to do it as it needs to be a school-wide effort where we get feedback from not only teachers, but from parents and from students. So they feel like they're part of the answer rather than being told they're solely the problem. Here's one that was highest on the list, right? People shared that they think students' time management skills is one of the biggest problems. I have 3 kids. All of them have made it to college, thank goodness. Not that that defines success, but that was their goal, so it's success for them. But I remember watching them fall asleep at night studying, and I just thought to myself, something is incredibly wrong here. And they had decent time management skills. But this is something we have a great deal of control over. Often we're in such a hurry to start getting to the content and the curriculum that we forget students don't know how to manage their time frequently. And there are simple skills that we can give them if we build it into the culture of our classroom. For instance, agendas. I would recommend having agendas, having a weekly agenda check and giving students credit for keeping an accurate agenda. This is a little trick that you can use to be sure that kids are getting in the habit of creating agendas. I used to do what's called surprise binder checks, where I required my students to have an agenda in the front of their binders. And I would just, at a moment's notice, say, hey, take out your binders, I'm going to do a binder check. And one of the first things I looked for was, are they completing their agenda? Now, this certainly doesn't solve all the issues. Students, I used to feel like could sense when a surprise binder check was coming up, and they would quickly ask to copy, the agenda from another student. But we can do simple things like this to empower. It's not perfect, but at least it shows the students that we take seriously their time management. And we're going to take the time to teach it in the classroom, not just go like, say you should have an agenda, but really demonstrate, model what good time management practices are. And that's sometimes hard for us as teachers, right? Because we're always running as fast as we can. And I feel like, my time management skills weren't the best in the classroom, but I always tried my best to model good time management strategies. So we need to take time to teach time management. Strive to make time variable and learning fixed by focusing on learning over compliance. I once sat on a grading committee with students, parents, and district administrators. And what we were talking about is when we asked the students about, do they feel like they're learning? It wasn't surprising. It was sad. It saddened me. What they said was, no, they just figure out how to get what they need to get done as quickly as they can. That's what they're shooting for, to get it done as quick. Learning is not important to them as, I just need to get it done. I need to jump through this hoop, and I need to make sure I get the best grade as I can. So what they've figured out is our best students have learned how to play the game. They know how to play the game. And so what they're doing is they're just complying with us, but they're not really learning. They're turning things in on time. They're getting their homework done. But at least in my classroom, and maybe it's different in yours, but at least in my classroom, when I would assign homework, I know the students were just going through the motions to get it done. Because if I gave them any type of check for understanding. Frequently, they had no idea. They wouldn't read. They just look up the answers. And so I really got away from that as a teacher. And what I mean about variable, time being variable and learning being fixed, right now, if you think of our classrooms, time is fixed. We have a certain amount of time to get the content and the curriculum taught. And frequently, we're not waiting for students that didn't learn it. So the learning's variable. We're moving ahead whether they know it or not. And I think we need to strive to try to change that paradigm where time is variable. Kids can take as long as they need within reason to learn something, and the learning is fixed. If students have more time, I believe it will cut down on cheating. If we give them opportunities to retake tests, to redo assignments, as we push towards mastery, rather than just focusing on grades, I think that we'll see a decrease in cheating. More on that to come. So this is what I'm talking about. We must begin to emphasize mastery over grades. We put kids in such a predicament that they have to learn something in a set amount of time. And if they don't, we categorize them as being failures sometimes. And it's not that they're not capable, it's that they just need more time. And then on the other side of the coin, we have students who don't need as much time. I recently visited a high school where they have moved strictly to competency-based education and mastery grading principles. And one of the most interesting things they do is that when they get freshmen into high school, they test them in English. And if they can prove mastery in English 9, that's what it is in the United States, it's English for 9th graders, they just give them an A and move them on, believing, hey, there's no point in making students sit through something they're already experts in. Why would we do that? And conversely, I would argue, and they do this at this school also, if kids need extra time, why don't we give them extra time? What is the purpose of education? The purpose of education is to focus on the learning. And I think that with the rush to get through, like I said, curriculum, we force kids to our timeline or to arbitrary timelines set by our government or in the United States and our states, when really the whole purpose is to make sure they learn. And so I encourage you, and it's hard because we're stuck in a system that doesn't really allow this, but anytime you can develop policies in your classroom that emphasize mastery over grades, you will see a decrease in cheating, because kids know, hey, this test I'm taking is not going to make or break my grade. I'm going to have time. I'm going to have an opportunity to really learn this. Establish a climate of care. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the presentation, and I just will revisit it here. And it has to do with, again, the idea of letting kids take their time to achieve mastery. If we can do that, again, we're going to see a decrease in cheating. I don't know about you, but as I watched my kids matriculate through school and I watched my own students, the amount of stress they were under, sometimes they put it on themselves, sometimes by peers, sometimes my students' parents would put a lot of pressure on them, because everything was so high stakes, because we were moving on with the curriculum, whether they could keep up or not. Yes, we had interventions where students could get extra help and do things like, and had be able to get extra tutoring and things like that. But still, they knew that we were moving on and they were falling farther and farther behind. And we can talk about how we do grades also. Another example from my career is that We had teachers that if a student missed an assignment, the student got a 0 on it. So let's say it's a 100-point assignment, the student would get a 0. Well, that's not an F, that's a double F. And so what we found is our students, especially our students who are at risk, who come from poverty, who have all sorts of reasons why they might not be able to complete an assignment on time, they would basically have double Fs. They would dig themselves in such deep holes that they couldn't get out of. And so one of two things would happen. One is they would just solely give up. They'd just be, I'm done. I'm so far behind. I can't, there's no sense. Or they would cheat. And they would cheat to try to get caught up because they were desperate not to get an F. And so I think, and this is going to be reoccurring in this presentation, that so much of the cheating problem we have is due to the really unrealistic pressure that we put kids under. If you think about it, I had students that would go home and after spending an entire day at school, so 8 hours of day at school, they would go home and do 4 more hours of homework. I mean, we don't do that as adults. It's just really, really hard on kids. And so they are trying to find the quickest way to get through things. And sometimes that is to cheat. And so I suggest we turn down the pressure. Let's break down the pressure on kids. I am always amazed at when I visit schools where when there are finals, that the finals are crammed into such a short time span that students are just overwhelmed. So I encourage schools to sit down and as a school community, really work to stagger the scheduling of high stake assessments and assignments. Give kids time. I had a teacher tell me, well, if we do that, we're not preparing them for the real world. I don't get extra time or people in professional jobs, they don't get extra time on deadlines. And that's just simply untrue. I can't think of a time where I've been up against a deadline and I have gone to my boss or my principal and said, hey, could I have another day on this? Generally, the answer is yes, take a day. And so I suggest that we extend that to our kids. And so I'm going to turn it over for a demo here in a second. But I realize that some of this is, there's more traditionalists. Some people feel like we do need to prepare kids, that life is stressful. If I understand that, but I encourage you to kind of think about what we've talked about, what I've shared here today, and try to internalize it. And also realize that there are great tools that can make the lives of teachers and students easier. And that's what we're going to show you a little bit today, of how you can use Neo and Turnitin to really, really help alleviate some of the pressure that teachers are under also to get grading done, to make sure that their students aren't cheating. And so I'm going to turn it over to Catalina right now. I'll stop sharing so she can start.
Okay, let's share here. Okay, so just to pick up on the idea that technology can be helpful to foster academic integrity, and I will show you how exactly what we mean, exactly what technology and how to use it, and pick up on some of these interesting ideas that Todd shares. So the first thing that I want to emphasize on is that this talking about academic integrity and making it happen is not a one-man's job. This needs the institution. It needs the teachers, the educators, and it needs the students. So there is these different components of this whole academic integrity idea that we need to work on. And so as the institution, having academic integrity policies, for example, and the educators, well, we have to model it, and we have to design homework, design activities that actually disencourage students to cheat, for example, and give them feedback that is timely, that is relevant. And students, of course, I mean, there's this component of students, having the knowledge of what cheating is, what academic integrity is, why this is important and it's relevant. So just think of it as an effort of everybody within the institution and the institution itself working on this. And now just so the idea of academic integrity can be a little bit fuzzy, but I want to show you this. Where is it? We call it the plagiarism spectrum. So this is some practices that can be against, or that can go against, original thinking. And so think of academic integrity in practice, and it's really easy to kind of look on the other side of that coin and thinking, well, the opposite of academic integrity is plagiarism, or anything that is related to it. And it is not the only thing, but it's very easy to think of that idea of opposites, right? So we want students to do original work. And with original work and original thinking, we think of when someone, the student, the author, submits assignments that are their own work, composed of original ideas built on attributed sources. So we are not saying by any means that students cannot use somebody else's work. They can, they should. Of course, we build on other people's work. We just need to cite them and to acknowledge that they did something before us. And that's okay. And that's what we want, right? But there's a bunch of different types of practices that go against this original thinking idea. For example, and I mean, this is, we kind of want to go from less complicated to what really is complicated and we need to address. So, for example, students can plagiarize unintentionally. So I was teaching 5-7 years ago. I taught university classes, and one of my students handed this research methodology paper. It was a simple activity for, next week type thing. So he gave me this paper and he said, no references or citations. And I said, well, okay, what happened here? You came up with all of this yourself? He says, no, please don't worry, teacher. Everything came from the internet. I'm like, okay, so what? Well, everything is public, so I can use it. So this student didn't say this in a mean way. He didn't mean bad by it. He really thought that he could use the information because it was public. So there is some lack of knowledge about this kind of things. I hope that this student, who's probably now a professional, got the idea of you need to cite anyway. So there is this type of unintentional paraphrasing, for example, or unintentional plagiarism. But this is very easy to fix, right? We just need to tell them what to do. Now, there is some complicated things, and I mean, we can go to contract cheating, which is obviously very complicated and something that really needs to be addressed with students if we ever find out that they're doing this. So most of these things we could see, we could check for, we could use technology to try to see if students are doing this, and we can use technology and these detection tools to prevent these kind of things from happening, and make the technology a friend to create like a nice environment and a trust environment for students, so they don't have to do this, or they don't feel that they need to do this kind of things. So I'm going to go and show you what exactly what I mean. So I'm going to here to my class. My class is a languages class, of course, as you noticed. My English is not my first tongue. So I'm going to my Spanish class. Okay. So here, I have this already set up. So I have an assignment here. And my student already turned in is Jason, my student, my imaginary student. So he did this ensayo, an essay of 2,000 words. So what I want to see is what Jason did, right? So I'm going to check the grades, or to grade because I haven't graded him. He has 44% similarities. So look, this is very organic. It is within the Neo LMS. It's going to be in your list of assignments. Very easy to find. And then I'm going to go to the 44% because I want to check. Don't get the wrong idea with the number. The number is just a number. Let's see what this actually means. So I'm going to click here, and this is what I get. So this one has 54%. I'm going to show you in a minute why. So this is what Jason, my student, sent to me. Okay. So what I can see is his essay in Spanish, because that's what I asked for, right? They need to practice their Spanish. And what I'm seeing here is some parts of the text that are highlighted with these different colors and different numbers. And that's where the similarity is. So I'm not saying my student has 44% or 54% because I was playing a little bit with
Catalina, just to interrupt, we can't see that screen, that second screen. We still see the...
Yeah, I know why, because I wasn't sharing my whole screen. There you go. Okay, now you're seeing the whole screen, right? No, never mind. No share.
Yes, yeah, we're seeing it. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So here, this is so I was talking about the highlights. So here is what where the similarities are. And I'm not saying by any means that this is plagiarism. It might be, if the student didn't cite properly, it might be just a coincidence, or it might be similarity. Why similarity? Well, because my student used citations. For example, here you can see there's quotes. It makes sense. My student used quotes. Here again, quotes. Or here there's a different way of citation, which is just indent the paragraph. Of course, there's some highlighting here because this is the references list. Fine, I'm not the only one. Jason is not the only student ever to have used this bibliography. So what I'm saying is I can see everything that my student did, and I can even, and there's a list. So the numbers and the colors represent what, where these sources are. So it will tell me that it's internet. It will tell me when it's a student paper from a different institution or the same institution for that matter. And sometimes if it's a publication, you know, like a journal where they took the information from, it will say. So very interesting because I can see the type of sources my student is using, whether or not my student is citing. And I can play a little bit with this similarity report. So again, I'm not saying my student has 54% of plagiarism. My student is not cheating in 54% of his paper. I'm saying there's similarity in 54% of his paper. So I can even filter this. So look at this. For example, the question is highlighted because I used it in a different paper. So I could, for example, filter the template, the assignment template. I already did this. I did this, and I can apply changes. And look, that is the 44%. So this is not including the template. Because I mean, when you see it at first, you're gonna say, well, but that's not plagiarism, that's the question. Yeah, perfect. So we can exclude the template. We can also exclude, remember that I had some quotes here. Here, this is a quote. Here, this is a quote. So I can also filter that. So I can filter my bibliography. I can exclude smaller sources. I'm not going to do that right now. But look at this. I'm right now at 19%. So it means that there's some quotations, that there's bibliography. So I'm not accusing my student, and I'm checking what he did, what kind of practices is he using. Also, there is but then again, there's some stuff that he might have not done correctly. For example, look at this paragraph. If I found this paragraph in this source, it means that it's somewhere else and my student didn't cite it. So now, what do we do with this information? We talk to the student, we show the student. So here is like good practices. So this is all the things you can do. So first thing, talk to the student, show the student, give the student feedback about this or any other thing in the paper, right? So I can give my student feedback on, the quality of the essay, the grammar, the Spanish, whether or not he's using what I told them to use, right? So I can use, here I have a rubric, and I'm going to show you quickly. But there's information here that I can grade the paper within the Similarity report. I can fit this, give this quick marks. So I'm giving my student information on what he did right or what he did wrong, and what should he do for next time. So to get a better grade if you want. And I can also, record a voice comment or write a text. So there's a lot of feedback that I can give within the Similarity report. And this feedback can be related or not to his citation and references and, all his academic integrity. So it could be about content, it could be about format, or it could be about citations and references and what he can do better. So there's a lot of information here, but there's a lot of actionable items and actionable things that we can do with a Similarity report. So we walk towards this idea of academic integrity. Now, a couple of best practices, and try to think of what Todd was saying. For example, I'm going to change here. I'm going to share this one here. Okay, so I was here and there is this assignment, and look at this. I can choose how many attempts, for example, my student has to send this homework. Okay, so think about the idea of telling the student what they need to do and giving them a deadline. It's fine. Okay, so there is a deadline. There is the option to extend that deadline, of course. But there is the option also that they can hand in beforehand. So he has, in my case is Jason. So Jason has 3 attempts. So what if my student has 3 attempts? So he tries the first time, he checks his paper himself, because I'm giving him the option to check his paper and check for similarity in his own paper. So he can check. Of course, he's doing this beforehand. So there is a time management issue that I never expected when I was using Turnitin as a teacher, but it happened because I gave them the option, okay, you can check your paper several times just before the deadline. So they would finish early so they could check and change anything that was wrong. So there's 2 things that I'm helping the student with. One is time management. The other one is I'm giving the student this trust environment. So I'm trusting you to check your own paper. So send that draft, fix it if it needs fixing, and then send it back. Send it again and send it again. I'm giving, in this case, I'm giving three attempts, but it could be more than 3. So there is this trust idea that Todd was mentioning. And there is this time management idea. We are teaching students to manage their time because they need time to, send it and fix it. So we can do this, and this is all about settings. So it's super interesting and very easy. So here in the overview, we can choose how many attempts. So I would say more than 1. I mean, if this is not the final paper and it is not the last day of class, right? But we can design activities and assignments and homework so we can work with this, and we can let them check. And that is also here within the Turnitin settings. I'm going to share here. So here within the Turnitin settings, you can choose to allow students to view the similarity report. So this is very interesting. So you can give them more than 1 attempt, and you can let them see the similarity report, and that's your choice as a teacher. And you can tell, I mean, there's several options, but those were two that were very much related to what Todd was saying, creating this trust environment and teaching students. And I would recommend, and that's again, me as a teacher, I would recommend that we take time at the beginning of the semester or the year or the academic year to show students what a similarity report looks like. As an example, look, this is what you're going to see. So let's talk about why we need to cite, why academic integrity is important, how we can see academic integrity in a paper, for example, what exactly this percentage means. Because first, if we don't talk about these things with students, first thing they're going to say, they're going to react, I didn't cheat. I didn't do that. 54% is not accurate. I didn't copy 54% of my paper. So talk to them, show them the similarity report, make the difference between similarity and plagiarism. And that is helping students. That's giving them feedback. That's, showing them you trust them. And this is how technology will help you foster this academic integrity within the institution. So this is kind of your contribution to this bigger idea of academic integrity within the institution. And it's talking about it and making it happen and making it real and clear and obvious to the student. This is where you start. And this is something that it's going to go to your professional life eventually, right? So doing things right from the start. So I would recommend using it, but making it very transparent to students. And I mean, I'm talking from the experience that I had as a teacher using Turnitin for many years, and it works. Students do realize that this is important stuff. They do learn. And we are firm believers in the company that you can learn academic integrity. And this is a way to teach it, right? Just making it clear and transparent for students. So we have some time for questions. So I would, Todd, I will ask you to check if you have any questions for you, or is there anything that is addressed for me?
There's a couple questions. One is regarding, it asks, is there any safe common electric ground with school or university representatives where students can say anything out without fear of retaliation if we've ever seen an initiative like that. There are several platforms that do similar things like that allow kids to anonymously report information or anonymously ask questions. Forget the name of them now, but yes, I have seen that for those of you that are asking that question. Another question is, if students write the essay in his notebook and uploads a photo on Neo, does the tool work? So that's for you, Catalina. Can they upload an image?
So, I mean, as you could see in the example, the document can have images, but we don't check for similarity within images. So we check for text similarity. So it has to, it could be a PDF, for example, but it has to come from a text, so we can check similarity, and we won't see if the image was copied from somewhere else.
So
it is a text similarity tool, essentially.
I think the question is more about, does Turnitin offer like an OCR tool that if they put it in an image that's somebody wrote something, that it turns it into text and then does the checking?
No, it will check only like digital text, essentially. So anything that comes from a word processor or PDF, but coming from digital text instead of, say handwriting, we won't see that because we'll see it as an image.
Okay, then there's another one for you, I think. Let me read it. It says, Turnitin is a great tool for essays, dissertations, papers, etc. But when the assignments are related to foreign language teaching, Turnitin cannot spot plagiarism that originates from using Google Translate or any other translation software available online. How can plagiarism be prevented in this case, in your opinion?
Actually, there is some kind of translation that we can do. In this case, so what we have, I speak Spanish, right? So my students will send their documents in Spanish. So what the tool can do, this tool that I was showing you, Turnitin Feedback Studio. So what we can do is we see the document in Spanish, we make a translation. This is internal, so we don't show you the translation to English. And then we will have two similarity reports, one in English and one in Spanish. So that's very interesting, but it works only with English. So it could, and my example is with Spanish, obviously, but then you could do, Portuguese to English or German to English or any other language, well, not any other languages, but 20 languages to English. So there's that part that we can do. I mean, not the other way around. So for example, if the text is in Portuguese, I wouldn't check against Spanish, for example, or if the text is in English, we won't check against any other languages in one direction only. So that part we can do, and we actually see some sort of translation issues and translation similarities in other languages. And now the option to check, say, English against other languages is more complicated. So you would see, though, when you're a teacher, there's this hunch that there's a translation issue because you see the grammar kind of, or the wording is kind of strange. So I would check when I was a teacher, I sometimes realized that this was coming from a translation and we didn't have the translation matching at the time. So so there's something that you can do with your instinct that I think is very important. You can use our tool, in the direction that I just mentioned. And I mean, there's some more technology to include in this kind of thing. So we'll see what engineering and product comes up with to, tackle these kind of problems, because we know it is an issue in certain languages.
There was one more. It's more of a suggestion about the idea of trying to change the paradigm where learning is variable and time is fixed, to swapping that in the use of by using student mentors, students who are a little farther ahead, mentoring students who are maybe falling behind. And I've seen lots of great mentoring programs. So the question, what do I think about that? I think it's great. And this person who wrote it also mentioned that it also serves the purpose of reducing bullying by creating better relationships among students. So yes, I think mentoring programs are fabulous. And that is it for the questions. Oh, how can I start using this tool? Is it automatic?
Basically, I showed you two tools. So one is Neo, the LMS, and then Turnitin integrated to Neo. So both of them, they're institutional. So if your institution has Neo and has Turnitin, a license, and they're separated, you can start using them. I mean, the institution has to do all the behind the scenes work to make it happen and to make it integrated, just as I showed you. So you create the assignment within Neo, and then you can check the assignment with Turnitin. So you would need to see what your institution is subscribed to, and then from then you can use both. But it needs a subscription for both.
Yeah, we have a free offering, a free trial. Catalina, do you have any type of free trial that people can play around with?
No.
No. Okay.
It needs to be an institutional
purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Doesn't look like there's anything else. So last request for questions, if you have any. Okay, well, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please reach out to Catalina or myself if you have further questions. I'm not sure if we included our contact info, but I'll work with our marketing department to see if we can get that out to everybody. So you can reach out to us if you have questions. Catalina, do you have anything to say before we go?
Well, thanks everybody for their questions and for your attention. And we know it's a little late for some of you. And do work on these things. I mean, whether or not you have the tool, the academic integrity, it's something that we can work on and we should talk about in institutions all the time. And I see a lot of Latin American names in the audience, and I mean, it's not exclusive of Latin America, but we do have a lot of problems afterwards if students don't learn how to do things properly from the start. So it is our responsibility, and this is something that we should start talking about, and we should show students how to do it, and we should show with, teach with example. So do talk about these things and do promote academic integrity in your institution. So that's my invitation. I mean, if you have the tool, fantastic, do use it. It's a great tool, both of them. If you don't, still, there is a lot of academic integrity talk we need to be doing in our countries.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.